Let's turn to Genesis chapter 43. And the first two verses are, "Now the famine was severe in the land. So it came about, when they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, 'Go back, buy us a little food.' Well, they ran out of the food they bought on that first trip, and they're going to have to swallow their pride and go back to Egypt and get some more grain. Things are bad. 7 years of no rain, that's a long time. I don't know how many years we're into it right now, but even a year would be tough, be bad. Verse 3, Judah spoke to him, however, saying, 'The man solemnly warned us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send your brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food. Or send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food. But if you do not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you will not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Now, Judah he's protesting his father's desire to send them back there. And it would appear that Judah is the spokesman for the group now. Reuben is not heard from again. They were told that they had to bring their little brother, or else they would not get Simeon back, nor could they get any food. They had to prove that they're a family like they first claimed, and not a sovereign nation spying on Egypt in order to do some kind of later attack. That's what he said anyway. He knows that's not the case. But he wants to know if his little brother's alive. That's because he doesn't trust his brothers. They're going to have to prove it. Verses 6 and 7, then Israel said, "Why did you treat me so badly by telling the man whether you still had another brother?" But they said, "The man questioned particularly about us and our relatives, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' So we answered his questions. Could we possibly know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Well, Jacob is angry, and he's rehashing this whole incident now. He wanted to know why they had to go and bring up the fact that they have another brother and that their father's still alive. Why did you even bring that up? Well, they told him they had no idea what he was getting at. He just asked the questions, and they answered them. They spoke the truth to him. They had no way of knowing any different. And they thought, how could this guy have known? Verse 8, and Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the lad with me, and we'll arise and go, that we may live and not die, we as well as you and our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You may hold me responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame before you forever. For if we had not delayed, surely by now we could have returned twice." Well, Judah says that he's going to be surety for Benjamin. He is using himself as a personal guarantee in this situation. The only problem is Judah doesn't have control over this situation. Okay? Now, he's trying to fully guarantee something he cannot fully guarantee. That's not a good idea. We read in Proverbs 17, verse 18, "A man lacking in sense pledges and becomes surety in the presence of his neighbor." Verse 11, "Then their father Israel said to them, 'If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags and carry down to the man as a present a little balm and a little honey, aromatic gum and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. And take double the money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also, and arise, return to the man.'" So they're going to take some gifts here. They're going to show some kind of sincerity, and he's going to let them take Benjamin, and he's not happy about it.
Did the other brother hate Benjamin?
No.
Okay. The reason I asked that because you said he couldn't particularly guarantee it.
Well, no, he couldn't. He couldn't guarantee that he's going to be able to bring the little brother back.
Oh,
See, that's something he can't guarantee, and he's trying to guarantee that. Verse 14, "And may Elohim Almighty grant you compassion in the sight of the man, that he may release to you your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." Well, Jacob is praying that El Shaddai, that's Elohim Almighty, give them mercy before the man. Jacob says he'll be desolate and left alone if anything happens to Benjamin. Verse 15, so the men took this present, and they took double the money in their hand, and Benjamin. And they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his house steward, bring the men into the house, and slay an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. So the man did as Joseph said, and brought the men to Joseph's house. They took double the money. Now, apparently they're going to try and get twice as much food and make this the last time they have to go do this. And when they arrived, Joseph invited his brothers to dine with him. He ordered that fatted calf to be killed. They're going to have a feast. Verse 18. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, it is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, that he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us for slaves with our donkeys. Okay, only those brothers were invited to Joseph's house. Now, you know why they were afraid? Well, it's guilt complex, it's one thing, but it's a fact. Egyptian officials in that day had dungeons in their homes. Okay? So if you're invited to their home, that's not necessarily a good thing. That's why they were scared.
It's not so bad that they did actually sell him into slavery.
Yes, they did actually sell him into slavery. That's correct. I don't think he forgot it either. Verse 19. So they came near to Joseph's house steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house and said, oh, my master, we indeed came down the first time to buy food. And it came about when we came to the lodging place that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full. So we have brought it back in our hand. We've also brought down other money in our hand to buy food. We do not know, who put our money in our sacks. Well, they wanted to get a head start on the excuses, okay? Don't wait till you're questioned about this. Let's start splaining right up front, okay? That's what they did. Might be fighting for their lives. Verse 23. And he said, be at ease, do not be afraid. Your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. You know, Joseph's steward said he received all the money, and they paid, and they owe him nothing. He said they could credit their Elohim and the Elohim of their father for their extra money, no matter how it was conveyed. And, so this guy, he says, he more or less says, okay, maybe I did it, but it's because of your Elohim that this happened. And that's how Elohim desires to work in the world. He wants his people to do his wishes. And when we give food, clothing, shelter, money, or anything to a brother in need, we are doing the work of our Father in heaven. And that's really a privilege. It boils down to the fact that if we truly love our neighbor, all we're doing is doing what he commanded. That's all we're doing. If we do what he commands and he supplies it all, then we're acting as faithful servants of his. And that's really what this guy's saying. Verse 24. Then the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys fodder. So they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand, and bowed to the ground before him. They were treated like distinguished guests here. When Joseph arrived, they bowed down to him again, and there's that dream, those two dreams of Joseph. He had the two dreams. They did it again. Verse 27. Then he asked them about their welfare and said, is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? And they said, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. And they bowed down in homage. Joseph desperately wants to see his father again. he hoped that he was still alive. Verse 29. As he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said, "May Elohim be gracious to you, my son." And Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother. And he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Well, yeah, he's still using an interpreter. Yes, he is. Right. No, he's not talking to them directly yet. But this is his one true full brother. Okay, the other brothers are half brothers. And he hadn't seen him in many years. He was a little boy when he last saw him. Now he's an adult. Verse 31, then he washed his face and came out. And he controlled himself and said, "Serve the meal." So they served him by himself and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is loathsome to the Egyptians. Now, Joseph doesn't want to reveal himself yet, so he observed the Egyptian custom of not eating with the Hebrews. Why was this a custom? Well, Scripture tells us in that day, it says, "For every shepherd is loathsome or an abomination to the Egyptians." That's in Genesis 46, verse 34. That you shall say, "Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that we may live in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians." And they're going to end up living in an area by themselves just because of this. Verse 33. Now they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment. And he took portions to them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they feasted and drank freely with him. So they were seated at the table in the order of the oldest to the youngest. And they looked at each other. How do you know that? The cup?
Yeah, the cup. He said he
That's coming.
divination. Okay.
Yeah, that's coming. How does he know this? He didn't ask us who the oldest was and anything. Now, how did he do this? And then he shows favoritism to Benjamin. Gives him 5 times as much. This had to give them a hint to his identity, but it never crossed their minds. They thought he was dead years ago. And now he dressed and looks like an Egyptian. So, yeah, his status among the Egyptians was second in command of the world. And why did he give Benjamin 5 times as much? That's true, and that's his favorite, and he knew he had nothing to do with him being sold into slavery. But you know what he's doing here? I think he's testing these brothers again to see if they're going to act in a loathsome manner toward Benjamin and be jealous, be envious of him. That's what he's doing. He wants to see if these scoundrel brothers of his have really changed. Okay? And he's going to go out of his way to test them. And he's been doing it, and he's going to keep doing it. It says they drank and they feasted. They were merry with him. It means, in Hebrew, it means they drank largely together. Okay? They had a good time. They had a real good time. Chapter 44, verses 1 and 2. Then he commanded his house steward, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph had told him. Now the mention of silver or money occurs 20 times in this account of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph was sold by his brothers for 20 pieces of silver. Now Joseph is going to test his brothers with silver. Joseph, he's very generous with his brothers. He gives them more than their money's worth and secretly gives them their money back again. This makes their supposed ingratitude that he's going to accuse them of seem even worse.
He gives to the youngest of them.
Gave it to all of them. But he put the silver cup that's his in Benjamin's sack. Verses 3 and 4, as soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. They had just gone out of the city and were not far off. When Joseph said to his house steward, "Up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good?" So Joseph set his brothers up again. He's going to have his men overtake them and accuse them of theft. Yeah, ulcers, you got that right. Verse 5, "Is not this the one from which my master drinks, and which he indeed uses for divination? You've done wrong in doing this." Well, Joseph obviously didn't use a cup to practice divination. The reason the comment was made, it's to attach significance and value to that cup. Okay? That's what he's trying to do. The use of divination on Joseph's part was probably assumed by the people, okay? Because he already had a reputation of knowing the future and that type of thing, so they just assumed it was divination. And he just let them think what they're going to think. How else do you get to be second in command to Pharaoh? Verse 6, "So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. And they said to him, why does my master speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your master's house?" The brothers don't believe anything could possibly be wrong. They knew they were treated very well, just almost like royalty there in Egypt. So they make a rash statement here about their honesty. Verse 9, "With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my master's slaves."
I like the hangman's noose.
They offered, what the brothers offered was, hey, if you find that cup on any one of us, you can kill him. Then the rest of us will be your slaves. Well, that kind of, yeah, that don't realize, exactly. You know, this kind of boastful comment, that was made by their father also, if you remember, a few chapters ago. That was in Genesis 31, verse 32. That was Laban, Rachel's father. Rachel took his idols that he did practice divination with. And Laban caught up with Jacob and his family and said, Jacob said, "The one with whom you find your God shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Remember how Rachel got out of that? Yeah, she sat on them. But why did they make her get down? And yeah, so she said, "No, it is the time of a woman for me." And all the men went, "Ugh! Okay, whatever you say." We'll be leaving now.
We don't want to touch anything unclean.
Verse 10 of Genesis 44, "So he said, now let it also be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and the rest of you shall be innocent." Well, the man's going to allow them something less than what they offered here. He said, "I'll just take the guilty one as a slave only, and that's it. The rest of you can leave." Yeah, what about that guarantee? Verse 11, "When they hurried, each man lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes. When each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city." So the search went from the oldest to the youngest. And that cup was in Benjamin's sack. And the brothers were extremely upset over this. They don't know what they're going to tell their dad. Okay? Now, tearing one's clothes, that's a sign of mourning. Leviticus 10, verse 6, we read, Then Moses said to Aaron and to his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, Do not uncover your heads nor tear your clothes, so that you may not die, and that he may not become wrathful against all the congregation. But your kinsmen, the whole house of Israel, shall bewail the burning which Yahweh has brought about. So the priests aren't allowed to tear their clothes. That's against the Torah. And it says here it could even bring on the wrath of Elohim on all the people if they did that. You remember what the high priest did when he accused Yeshua of blasphemy? He tore his clothes, which is against the Torah. And it was that and a lot of other things that brought a lot of the wrath of Elohim on the people. But that was part of it. Well, what they're doing here is what caused their father to do years ago. In Genesis 37, starting at verse 32, and they sent the varicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, We found this. Please examine it to see whether it's your son's tunic or not. Then he examined it and said, It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. So Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Back to Genesis 44, verses 14 and 15. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him again. And Joseph said to them, What is this deed that you've done? Do you not know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination? Well, he's faking the importance of that cup again to make this act seem even worse than it is. Once again, it'd be assumed that a guy with the rank of what Joseph had would rely on some kind of secret magical source of gathering information. But once again, this is accusing them of being spies and trying to subvert the kingdom of Egypt. Verse 16, So Judah said, What can we say to my master? What can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? Elohim has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my master's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. The brothers want to know how they can clear themselves. They know they can't return home without Benjamin. They can't do that. Joseph knew that. Regardless, Joseph had been listening to their conversations back and forth anyway, and just had a dumb look on his face. But he was taking in everything that they said. He's going to let them go back, but without Benjamin. He knew what position this offer would put them in. He gave them an opportunity to save their own lives, but at the expense of their brother. If they can't stay in Egypt, they've got a father that'll die. He needs food. Verse 18, Then Judah approached him and said, O my master, may your servant please speak a word in my master's ears. And do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh. Now Judah is going to give the longest speech in the book of Genesis. Now it's a beautiful speech. It's filled with passion and sincerity. But there aren't many speeches in Genesis, by the way. Verse 19. My master asked his servants, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my master, We have an old father and a little child of his old age. Now his brother is dead. So he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. Now, Joseph starts this speech by rehashing the events in verses 18 through 29. Verse 22, But we said to my master, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servants, however, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. Thus it came about, when we went up to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my master, and our father said, Go back, buy us a little food. Judah is appealing to Joseph here on the aspect of his father and his loving relationship with his youngest son. He wants that to strike a chord in his heart and make him maybe see their point of view. But he said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we'll go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. And your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. And the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. And if you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hair down to the grave in sorrow. His father can't live without his only son of the woman that he truly loved. This is going to appeal to Joseph in a way that Judah could not have imagined, since Judah did not know who he was talking to. Verse 30, now therefore when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will come about when he sees that the lad is not with us that he will die. Thus your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I did not bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame before my father forever. Judah is stating that he will bear the blame if Benjamin is not brought back to his father. And it'll be the end of his father's life if that happens. Verse 33, now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad a slave to my master, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest I see the evil that would overtake my father? Now Judah finishes his plea by offering to take the punishment of Benjamin upon himself. And it's actually kind of a beautiful illustration of what his descendant would do. Later being Yeshua, being a descendant of Judah. Any questions on Genesis 43 and 44? The next few chapters are beautiful, where Joseph breaks down and reveals himself. Because now he realizes he's in a position where he has to. Okay, he can't let them go back without the little one and daddy keel over dead. That's not what he wants.
Why did he want to keep him in the first place?
To teach his brothers a lesson. Right. Right. And Joseph, he's not in a position to leave Egypt now forever. As long as he's alive, he's second in command, and he has to stay there now. So he couldn't go there. He possibly could have, but I think he felt like he's in his position, he has to run things. And he did. Pharaoh didn't have to do anything anymore. Joseph ran everything.